Serving it up to you live on the Buffalo Rumblings Vidcast Network. I'm Bruce Nolan. That's Nate Geary. And this is Food for Thought, your favorite live show where we combine two of your three favorite F words, football and food. The third obviously being fun, and that's what we're going to have today. So, Mr. Geary, how you doing, dude?
So that was it. That was the new thing that you had for me today that you wouldn't tell me prior to going on air.
Tell me it wasn't good. Come on.
It was good. It was good,
especially
good. the double entendre of the last F, which I appreciate that you went the naughty route and went the fun route.
Absolutely, of course. I mean, what else are you gonna do? What else are you gonna do, right?
Love that about you.
So, we've got stuff to talk about. Before we get started, housekeeping. Reminder, like, subscribe, rate, review, YouTube super chats during the show. Get priority. We will get to every single one of them. We may not get to every single comment, but we will get to every single YouTube super chat. For the hors d'oeuvres today, for kicking off, I feel like this is the week where people started posting to their social media, when it was functional, mind you, their fall food.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to talk about, because as a general rule, I find that there are multiple camps when it comes to fall food. The first one being, when it gets sweater weather, I'm going to pumpkin. And the other one being, when it gets to sweater weather, I'm going to maybe cinnamon or apple. Are you an apple cinnamon guy?
Yes.
Are you a pumpkin guy?
Both.
Gun to your head, you got to pick one of the major fall categories. Where are you going?
So I do love pumpkin, but apple cinnamon it's the right choice. I don't have anything other than to say it's just the right choice. It's a sensible choice. Especially, like, I like to think about this too, is candles. A good, like, it's fall when you light the apple cinnamon scented, the apple pie scented candle. So for me, if that's the true signifier for me, if that's what sort of brings the nostalgia back, the smell that brings the memory in, or brings your thoughts into play, that's sensory, apple cinnamon to me is the way to go, and I'll die on that hill, no problem.
You know what? I appreciate the fact that you really were lost in thought there. I appreciate the fact that I really feel like you gave it your all. That was not a shoot from the hip take.
When would I ever on this show not give my 100?
No,
not this show.
You would
not this show.
No, you would never. Now, I am going to get on my soapbox for a second when it comes to fall food. I feel like, yes, I would never get up on my soapbox. One of the things that fall institutes is the idea that, hey, I can bust out my slow cooker now, right? I can bust out my soups now. Here's my statement to those people. You can do that whenever you want. I do slow cooker meals all the time in the summer because I'm an adult and I'm not going to let the calendar tell me when I can eat what I can eat. Hashtag what you want, when you want. This is a good opportunity for me to just say to everybody listening, the calendar can't stop you. If you want to have a burger at 6 a.m., you can do it. If you want to have breakfast at 9 p.m., you can do it. They have diners out there who specialize in specifically this thing, and you don't have to be beholden to the calendar. So although fall is the beginning of soup weather, it's the beginning of slow cooker weather for a lot of people, I'm here to tell you, you don't have to be handcuffed to that. You can have whatever you want, whenever you want. Nate, please tell me you're on my side.
I am on your side, Bruce. I believe that you can eat breakfast for dinner. I believe that if you wanted to have dinner for breakfast, you can. If you want to smoke your meats outside when there's 3 inches of snow, you should do that. And you should use your slow cooker, your crock pot in the kitchen on an 80-degree day without air conditioning. And you should be able to do that without anyone. Chili, Mr. Diggs. Yes, chili whenever. You do not have to wait for a season for chili. In fact, summer chilies with summer vegetables. I was just telling you this before we got on about how I do this fantastic urban farm share here in the city of Buffalo. It's on the east side, and we get some of the best, freshest produce. Like, until I had this, I had no idea that, like, Wegmans produce was trash, like, just like bad. And like Aldi is a great spot. Like, this can't hold any sort of water to like actual fresh farm picked the day before, and it's just something special, Bruce. And like, you throw those into some soups. That's what I got going on. Should I tell people why I'm eating dinner after the podcast tonight?
Of course.
So I'm eating dinner after the podcast. Normally, I don't wait till 10 p.m. On my Friday nights to eat dinner. But I determined today that I needed to eat ice cream at 6:30. So I got a 22-ounce large flurry from Green Acres on Broadway Avenue in Lancaster, and they have something called the brownie batter flurry. Now, this isn't your traditional brownie batter, Bruce, because brownie batter, usually they'll throw like a hot fudge in there with the vanilla ice cream, make it more of a battery-like, with just some delicious custard and then some brownie pieces, right? But they actually go the extra mile, Bruce, and they scoop out, your traditional brownie powder mix. And they actually scoop the powdered mix into the vanilla ice cream. And it is, like, I'm not even kidding, it's one of the best ice cream concoctions I've ever had. And I don't know anyone that's ever done the powdered mix with the ice cream. And oh my God, it's just divine. So yes, I had 22 ounces of that, and then ate a little bit of my girlfriend's because she got a little small one. She can't eat the ice. Bruce, I wonder this about you, because I know you're an ice cream guy, right? Like you do like ice cream.
Yeah, I'm cool with ice cream. I'm not a massive ice cream guy, but I'm cool with ice cream. Yeah.
So I can eat ice cream disgustingly fast. It does not matter also how much food I've eaten. It almost is like my stomach like siphons off into a second stomach that is built for ice cream. And then there's like the savory regular food side of my stomach. And there is no in between. Like, if I've had a full Thanksgiving dinner, I will absolutely go to DQ and get a Blizzard. No problem. I'm sick.
Calories spent on ice cream are not deducted from your daily total. Everyone knows this.
That is a fact.
This is just common knowledge.
These are the sorts of things. These are the facts that you're talking about with cold, hard facts.
Absolutely.
And in the podcast title. Yeah.
And of course, cold makes sense because, it's ice cream. I'll tell you what was else cold.
Yeah.
Benching Cody Ford was cold. It was cold
as
ice. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a meaningful conversation to be had about the offensive line. Week 1, Nate, when I asked you after week 1, is it too early to panic on the offensive line? You said no, it is not too early to panic on the offensive line. 2 weeks later, the Buffalo Bills made a significant shakeup at offensive line. Now, one of them was injury related, and it was Ike Butker for John Feliciano. I would anticipate John Feliciano to be back in his typical left guard spot now that he's been cleared from concussion protocol. But the Bills made a move unrelated to injury on the right side of the offensive line, moving Darrell Williams, the previous right tackle, who was just re-signed this offseason, into right guard, and putting rookie third-round pick Spencer Brown at right tackle. Now, I have not had an opportunity to talk to you about how Spencer Brown played, but when I went back and watched Spencer Brown, he played really well.
Yes, he did.
Looked like he was a natural in that spot. Darrell Williams was good in the run game. I thought he struggled a little bit in the pass game. Things happen a lot faster inside. But is this it? Is this the new offensive line? Yeah. Nate, is the offensive line set moving forward, or are further tinkerings? Because let's be honest, they've tinkered before with stuff.
They have.
So are we good now?
This is a pretty dramatic tinker, though. You just pay Darrell Williams this offseason, who, really came back into his own, the player that we saw early in his career in Carolina. And that a lot of that had to do with him going back to right tackle, right? We saw Carolina sort of fluctuate with him on the left side at tackle and at left guard, and it just did not work out, particularly at guard. It did not work for Darrell Williams. Now, I don't believe Darrell Williams played particularly well at guard, but it was not nearly as bad as a lot of folks were talking about during and immediately after the game. When he had a chance to go back, to your point, Bruce, there were some good things, there were some bad things, some things to like, and some things to leave last week. But what I will say is, I think that move makes a lot of sense to me. And Cody Ford straight up just got quit in Spain. Now, whether or not he gets traded here, I doubt that happens. I think they want to make sure they keep the depth on the interior of this offensive line, but he's full up just got Quentin Spain. And this team has they've made a, how do I want to put this? A routine of when they are done with you, they are sort of done with you. And this sort of felt like, Bruce, that they're done with Cody Ford. And what I believe the final nail in the coffin was after the game, one of the media members, I'm not sure who it was in the scrum, asked Sean, so what went into your decision to benching Cody Ford? And really, instead of, hey, this is just a matchup thing, or his response, Bruce, was, and I quote, we still believe in Cody Ford. Cody Ford is still a good football player. And when he said that, I said, oh yeah, they're done. That's the nail in his coffin. Cody Ford is no longer. I thought Spencer Brown, not to be too hot takey, I thought Spencer Brown was the best offensive lineman on Sunday. I think what he brings from an athleticism, from a size, from a reach, from a youth, I think they needed a little bit of youth infusion on this offensive line. So I really, really, really like what I saw from Spencer Brown last week. I like and have thought now for some time in the glimpses we saw in the first 3 weeks, Bruce, just coming in as sort of your swing tackle and coming in when Deion Dawkins goes down for a play. I thought to myself, this guy is going to be special. And I'm really it's just really a matter of when. And we see last week, he takes over that right tackle spot. I think it's his spot now. And the question's going to be, can Darrell Williams be better at right guard than Cody Ford? And I think if the answer to that question is yes, then this is going to be the offensive line, barring any injuries.
Growing Up Buffalo asked in the comments if my video feed is out. Yes, actually it is. I decided not to turn on my camera today. I jumped through a plate glass window to save a woman and child who were being mugged, and my face is horribly scarred. So I think every week I should come up with some sort of ridiculous reason why my video is not on. I feel like that could be like a running gag, and I'm kind of in on it.
I'm into that.
Absolutely, I think that there's a real possibility that this is just it on the offensive line, barring something moving forward. And I think that it's a shame that Cody Ford just got settled in at guard. And it's a shame that they kind of used his versatility to impact his development. And that's unfortunate. However, what I saw as Spencer Brown, you can't take that guy off the field right now. You can't. A lot of the concerns with Spencer Brown coming out are, the level of competition in college. How's the technique going to be? I was expecting him to be overstriding. His hands are high, the whole thing, right? It's not the case. If you go back and watch Spencer Brown, he looks like a natural.
Yeah.
And that's not something I expected to say about a guy who's a 3rd round pick, who was overly talked about as being a athletic freak and developmental. We saw in the preseason how far the difference was between Spencer Brown and Tommy Doyle. Even though they both
it's a big gap.
Come from significant programs, they're both freakish athletes. They're not the same. They're very, 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 very different as far as preparedness and readiness to play. What we didn't know was that wasn't Spencer Brown relative to Tommy Doyle. It was Spencer Brown relative to everybody. He's just ready to play right now.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying he's not going to get embarrassed. There's a lot of good offensive linemen who come off the offensive right side of the ball. A lot of good defensive pass rushers who are going to do that. And I'm sure he's going to make a rookie mistake or two. However, just like Gregory Rousseau on the defensive side of the ball, if you have special traits that can be utilized right away, then maybe we should start thinking about our definition of pro-ready. Because pro-ready, we have a tendency, pro-ready, we just experience. That's what we mean. Oh, he's experienced, or he came from a pro system, or things like that. But the fact of the matter is, if you have traits that are capable of being shown right now, then those traits that are special will give you a chance to be pro-ready now. So Spencer Brown, I think, is the key to not switching back. And I think he played well enough that I would expect it to be that way moving forward.
Do you believe that Cody Ford's failure to become a starting caliber replacement level player falls on development, or do you believe that partially because listen, development of Cody Ford has really from the beginning sort of been a mess. Starting him at tackle was never in his best interest, and they finally moved him to guard. Then he gets injured. Then they move him to the other side, and now he's settled in a position, and he gets essentially 2.5 games to work in. And whether or not that's fair or not, that's the NFL is not a fair. It's not fair. It's nothing to do with fairness. But what I'll say, Bruce, is it feels less like a failure of development and more of I think they might have just whiffed in the draft. I just don't know that this guy was someone that was going to be a replacement level player. I thought for sure he was a walk-in day one starter out of Oklahoma, but I thought it was at guard, and he has not looked replacement level at guard or tackle in the NFL. So I think I'm maybe just it ends up being a whiff more than a developmental flaw.
I went on record when Cody Ford came out many times as saying he's a guard, he's a guard, he's a guard, he's a guard. And then, of course, I had all the people, well, you think you know more than the team. And then, voila, he eventually moved him to guard. So I did think he was a guard coming out. I think that what the proper development, what the lack of bouncing around would do for us, it would allow me to feel a lot more comfortable with the conclusion that we whiffed. I think I would feel a lot more comfortable with that conclusion if it wasn't a contributing factor. And now I have this lingering contributing factor. And I'm not saying it's just because of that. I'm saying it's an obvious enough contributing factor that it makes me uneasy to say, well, we just whiffed. Like, it makes me uneasy to say that because I have another contributing factor that I have to look into that is bothering me a little bit. And that's the thing with Cody Ford, is it's one of those things where we have scenarios like this. Like, what if EJ Manuel wouldn't have been yanked by Doug Marrone? Would he have been okay? Not great, but okay, right? What if Trent Edwards wouldn't have gotten the concussion, right? I've gone on record as saying I don't think he was playing that well before he got the concussion, but some people still hang to the, if he wouldn't have gotten the concussion, he would have developed, he would have been a reasonable quarterback.
Part of this, Bruce, and I will say, is part of this is that Wyatt Teller has turned into like a martyr of sorts. Wyatt Teller is the cautionary tale. Wyatt Teller is the Josh Allen of the offensive line, which is you trade him and he becomes a superstar. And, and I mean, he's one of the best interior offensive lines in football right now. He's going to get paid this offseason. So like Cody Ford is not going to be, by the way, he is not going to be Wyatt Teller. So I think Wyatt Teller has created some scar tissue for this fan base, and maybe rightfully so, because I think right now Wyatt Teller solves a lot of your current issues on the interior a part of this offensive line. But I guess I digress by saying this, that I can say confidently that by sitting Cody Ford, and if Cody Ford ends up being traded or being moved in the offseason, which I think could be a total, I think he's done. I think he's been sort of outcasted in this organization. As opportunities they give them to people, I believe that when they are done with a player, they are just done. And it feels more than ever. And just listening to Sean McDermott's post-game comments, it feels like this thing is done with Cody Ford.
If I was going to make an argument for keeping him, it would be contractual statuses of other players on the offensive line as far as bodies go. Ike Bucker is going to be a free agent, right? John Feliciano's contract can be fairly easily gotten out of. Darrell Williams' contract can be reasonably gotten out of this year. Yeah. I think that you might run into just a bodies issue, and having a cheap body who you admire his versatility, which they've said a million times they do, on a second round rookie deal might be, well, we would like to get rid of him, but we don't want to leave ourselves short in that spot. Ladies and gentlemen, here with us right now, our guest for this evening, Mr. Steven Ruiz from The Ringer. Mr. Ruiz, how you doing, dude?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
It's a party all the time.
It's Friday night. We're podding. I can't crack a beer right now because I ate ice cream for dinner, and if you know anything about mixing beer and ice cream, it tends to really just kind of go wrong. So I've decided tonight that my normal situation of cracking a beer live on the stream, I'm not doing it. So, but feel free.
If I knew that was the tone, I would have got a beer. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely the tone of the show, 100%.
Damn.
Well, I mean, food is a part of the thing. So let me ask. I want to get your take on this before we move into this. I want to get your take on the fall food conversation that we were having earlier. So, first off, are you a person who specifically, staples in chili and soups and crock pots and only the fall and winter, or are you a year-round guy? Are you allowing this is a loaded question, by the way, are you allowing the tyranny of the calendar to hold you down to the spot where you will only have soups and chilies and apple and pumpkin and stuff during the fall?
No, but I do feel like I allow the calendar to dictate how much of that stuff I eat, and it increases in the fall. but I will not. Like, if I saw like pumpkin pie in the store in March, I'd buy it.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. We're starting a movement. There are dozens of us. Dozens. So that's
Happy to join.
always good. Steven, thank you so much for taking the time and
Yes,
coming
no
on our
problem.
show on Friday night. One of the things we want to talk about is now that we're at kind of what would historically be the quarter marker, right? If there were still 16 games, I'm still irritated that they
If the
moved it to
NFL
17.
believed in math, which they don't.
Right.
you know.
They don't. And it upsets me. The fact that there are no 500 teams really bothers me. The fact that I can't separate things into quarters bothers me. It's like the volume. It's
You
like
know,
the
though,
volume
Bruce,
on your TV.
what-
It can't be 17.
What I will say is the NFL has finally moved away from Jeff Fisher officially by moving away from 500. So Jeff
that's
Fisher
really
can no
good.
longer exist.
Oh no,
That's
he would
really
tie. He would tie a game. every
He would
year.
definitely have to
Yeah.
tie.
8-8-1. The
Right.
Jeff Fisher. From here on in, if anyone ever gets 8-8-1, we're calling it the Jeff Fisher from here on in. That's the way it's going to go. So we're at the quarter mark, right? It was very important not to say the quarter pole because I've had many people tell me before that the quarter pole is with a quarter left, not a quarter in. So that's very, very important. We not make that mistake. But there have been some fairly surprising quarterback performances so far this year. You see players like Baker Mayfield in the bottom half of the league in by most advanced metrics. You see players like Josh Allen at 19th in a lot of different metrics. Then you see other players like Daniel Jones and Taylor Heineke who are showing up in the top 10. Now, first off, when it comes, let's just go with the NFC East right now because I want to lump Daniel Jones and Heineke together. You know what? Let's lump Jalen Hurts in there too. Let's lump all three of the NFC East quarterbacks that aren't Dak Prescott. All three of them are, gosh, I hope this guy's the guy. Obviously, there's a little bit more hope with Daniel Jones because you invested a lot in him. With Jalen Hurts, it was kind of almost a default. There's still rumors that the Eagles might be interested in Deshaun Watson. And with Taylor Heineke, it wasn't supposed to be the guy at all. Ryan Fitzpatrick was supposed to be the guy. But if you were going to rank your confidence at this point in this guy who's currently playing is the guy, and by the guy, I mean will sign a second contract. That's how we're defining the guy. Will sign a second contract with that team that is a long-term extension. Rank those in order for me. Heineke with the Washington football team, Jalen Hurts with the Eagles, Daniel Jones with the Giants.
I will reverse the order you listed them in. Daniel Jones top, just because I think he's the best quarterback out of those three. Although I would say Hurts probably has the high ceiling, but I think the Giants are a stubborn enough organization where even if it's close, they're going to sign him rather than take that L on drafting him. What was it, 5th, 4th, one of those picks, 6th maybe, when everyone else
Too
thought
high.
he was outside of the top 20. So yeah, I'm going to say Giants first. And honestly, like I think it's the same for both Heineke and Hurts. I think Hurts is a better player and should get a longer look, but I don't think the organization has confidence in him. So, I mean, he might as well be Heineke with Washington.
Yeah, and I mean, I sort of. How about for the film over analytics people? Because you can never really truly have a blend of both. You can't just have, You can't be perfect, all right, Stephen. You can either be one or the other. And if you're a film guy right now, you're looking at the underlying numbers of Taylor Heineke. You're looking at some of these underlying numbers, particularly for Daniel Jones. And you might look at those numbers and say, how could they possibly be that much better than a Josh Allen? How could they possibly be that much better than a Baker Mayfield right now? And is it one of those cases where it's hard in this early part of the season without the full sample size to apply metrics like this that are really more so meant to view on a whole season sample size, where like I watched Josh Allen and Taylor Heineke go match up 2 weeks ago, and
it didn't look the same, did it?
No. And listen, part of this is, I think the Nick Wright conversation, which is one of the things I hate that a lot of national TV people do, is like, oh, look at his passer rating. And I just like, oh, I want to pull my hair out. Why are we talking about this? But I think a lot of people this week were sort of thrown off because maybe they didn't realize that Josh Allen's numbers have been sort of pedestrian through 4 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a small sample size thing, especially when you look at the schedules they faced. And Josh Allen faced that Steelers defense the first week, which is tough. And then this last week he played in a rainstorm, I believe. So, I mean, just that's 2 games. That's half the sample size right there that can throw off everything. I mean, yeah, use your eyes. That's what I would say. Go watch that Washington Buffalo game and think to yourself, which quarterback would you rather have? Which quarterback is the better football player right now? And it's fairly obvious. I think the only thing that I would be worried about with Josh Allen is I do think this season has showed that his floor is maybe a little lower than we thought it was after last year. I think his ceiling is still the same. We still see those high level throws even this last week and in the rain.
Yeah.
It's just, I think the range of outcomes is maybe a little wider than we expected this year.
So let's use our eyes and let's look at the way we've seen Josh Allen so far this year. And a lot of people, yourself, me, we were not really super high on Josh Allen coming out of college. There's no secret about that. So as you watch Allen now, and as I watch Allen now, and you compare him to the player that he was when he came out, what did people get wrong on Josh Allen? What did I get wrong? What did you get wrong? What did we all get wrong when it came to Josh Allen? When you look at the film now and you compare it to the way it was when you look back on him as a player, because I went back and I watched some Wyoming stuff this offseason. It doesn't even look like the same quarterback in a lot of cases. What did we all get wrong? What did a bunch of people get wrong on Josh Allen?
I think it's a combination of two things. One, we underrated his physical talent because it is special. It is rare. It's unlike maybe Cam Newton is the closest comparison in terms of size, athletic ability, and arm strength. And then I think we underrated the commitment this organization would have to him and giving him time to develop. Because even during the 2019 season, when they made the playoffs, there were still times when it was like, oh, is this going to be the guy long term? And they never wavered. And the longer a quarterback plays, he's going to get comfortable. And I think you see Josh Allen is way more comfortable in the pocket. And I would argue that's his biggest strength. And he's really fine-tuned what his strengths were in college. And that's being a huge man in the pocket and not being deterred when there's bodies around him and bodies flying. He's going to find space and be able to find a throw downfield. And you see that this year, that skill is still there. He's still making these amazing throws on the run. He still has this great field vision when he is forced outside the pocket. I think that's the one thing that he was going to be able to develop that strength. And that was going to be enough because he is this physical talent that we've never seen before.
So I'm going to recycle a Bruceism from right before you came on when we were talking about the Bills offensive line. And I'm going to apply it to this conversation. And I wonder if you believe that the term pro ready and how we're applying it to quarterbacks now, either A, has to change, or B, it just doesn't matter. Because I think about that draft, I think about the 2018 draft, and there's absolutely no question that if we're talking about spectrums, that Baker Mayfield was the guy that was sort of ready to walk into this situation from day one and be a starting NFL quarterback. And funny how he walks in and they did everything they could to essentially keep him off the field. But on the other end of that spectrum sat Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, who are arguably in that draft the two quote unquote rawest, or at least the least pro ready based on the style of football that they played. Josh Allen played in a pro style system in college, but there was really a lot of questions about the rawness to his game. But in a very different way, you looked at Lamar Jackson and you said he wasn't pro ready, mostly because you had, former NFL executives calling him a wide receiver and so on and so forth. We all know that whole situation. But I think looking back, it's funny, is that maybe the draft that we all we come here and we say, is pro ready just saying that we know what their ceiling is?
Yeah, I've had these discussions for the last couple of years, and I think you're right that it was the 2018 draft. For me, that's what it was. It was Josh Rosen. I thought he was the best quarterback in the class. And
Same, man. Same.
It's because you buy into these stereotypes we have of pro-ready quarterbacks, and it's a guy that can win from the pocket and he can beat defenses with his mind. But I've kind of flipped on that, what pro-ready is. I think pro-ready is a player that you could play right away no matter what. And I think a Josh Allen, even in that 2018 year when he was so raw, it was obvious he was the best option the Bills had because of his physical ability. They could use him as a runner. They would not have beaten the Vikings that year with any of the other quarterbacks they were trotting out there. And I would say now, in order to be pro-ready, that athleticism is a prerequisite. You have to have it because you're not going to beat defenses with your mind. You could see that with Mac Jones right now. Mac Jones has been good in all the ways we thought he would be good. He's reading defenses. He's getting rid of the ball. He's accurate, but he's not making plays because he doesn't have that athleticism to lean back on. Whereas a guy like Justin Fields, we saw him against the Lions. He's making way more big plays, even though he's not as advanced as a passer as Mac Jones is. And it's because he has that athletic ability. So I think you're right. I think it has flipped what pro ready is, because you can't just come in like a Mac Jones and expect to have a productive season right away until your mind catches up to the point where you can outsmart pro defensive coordinators.
So I guess this, I brought up Baker Mayfield, and I'm sort of fascinated in your thoughts early on here. And again, and let's use the same disclaimer we talked about with Josh Allen and with Daniel Jones and some of these, and Taylor Heineke, is the sample size and understanding the sample size as a context to your answer here. I do wonder what your overall thoughts of what has early here gone wrong with Baker, because there is this conundrum that I keep being told is not really a problem, which is this very clear disconnect between Baker and Odell Beckham Jr. And I don't know. All I know is I keep being told that it's not a problem, but every single week it's not there. There just is not the connection. You know, Josh Allen gets Stephon Diggs, and literally from the first game, it clicked. It was there. The styles worked together. Is this an Odell Beckham thing? Is this a Baker Mayfield thing? And I'm also going to put a little context to this too, because I think his left shoulder injury is absolutely 150% affecting his accuracy. I think it's affecting his throwing. Josh Allen would attest to that. He had a very similar injury early on last season, and I think it's why you saw him struggle against the Titans and the Chiefs last year, was that left shoulder injury in that sling. With all that said, Steven, like, what is going on with Baker in arguably the most important year of his career, since he has not gotten that extension yet?
Yeah, as for the Odell thing, I think it's more of a Baker issue, although, I mean, just from watching the film, Odell Beckham's getting open.
Yes, he is.
He's getting open downfield, and Baker Mayfield is not hitting them. Now, there are a lot of factors that we can't tell what's going on there from from the outside looking in. Like, we don't know if Odell's running his routes at the right tempo, whether he's breaking them off at the right point, but Odell's getting open and the ball's not getting to him. So I'm inclined to say it's a Baker thing. As for what's wrong with him this year, I do think the left shoulder thing is bothering him, because I think he's a guy that puts his whole body into throws, and that's how he gets his velocity. And that has to be bothering him. Having that painful of an injury in your upper body, which you use when you're throwing, it's got to be. And I think this just kind of exposes Baker. Not like I'm saying he's a bad quarterback, but I do think it exposes his weaknesses. He's not like the sharpest thinker in the pocket. He tends to panic and kind of, bounce through his reads. It's not
holds. And
his feet get out of rhythm, and it just throws off his accuracy. So now that he doesn't have this arm where he can make the throws to the wide open receivers, he's kind of getting exposed as a processor. I don't think his process is that good. Whereas, like Dak Prescott in week 1, it was very clear that his shoulder was bothering him. He had suffered a shoulder injury in training camp, but he is one of the best processors in the league, and he picked apart the Bucs defense. No problem. I don't think Baker has that in him, and I think that kind of exposes his flaws as a franchise quarterback.
I think we're starting to change, like you said, the idea of what pro ready means, and also maybe what the idea of franchise quarterback means. And so I think that what we are now is a league that is built around the ability to get explosive plays on offense and stop explosive plays on defense. And so when you get these quarterbacks, the Mac Joneses of the world, the Baker Mayfields of the world, right? You get these people who don't have the requisite physical traits to be able to provide explosive plays down the field frequently, and explosive plays with their legs, and being able to make a play in the second phase of the play, and you jumpstart the scramble drill, and now you're outside of structure and you're making big plays down the field. You're making something out of nothing. Some of the best explosive plays in football come when Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen are making something out of nothing. Do we just need to look at quarterbacks differently? I mean, somebody in the comments brought this up too. Tua and Herbert. Very similar concepts. Tua came out and he was a rhythm thrower, great in the RPO game, quick making decisions. He had good ball placement, but he wasn't that explosive player down the field. Justin Herbert was, a lot of people thought, a more polished version of Josh Allen when he came out. And sure enough, how many times does this have to happen before the entire mindset of the NFL just shifts toward, We need explosive plays. We need people who are at the helm of this offense to be able to give us explosive plays. Do you think we're there now, or is it going to take longer before the NFL starts to say, okay, because I know the NFL is notoriously slow to adapt and notoriously slow to change, but we've had enough happen in the last couple of years where between the Mahomes thing, the Allen thing, the Herbert thing, surely we're learning, right, Steven?
Yeah, I mean, when you look back at the last decade of draft results, and I think that's a smart place to cut it off, because that's when the 2011 CBA was signed, which affected how much you can practice, how much meeting time you have, and that's going to obviously affect the development of a young quarterback. In the last 10 years, if you look at it, the biggest misses in terms of teams drafting players, the players that have failed have mostly been pocket passers who don't add that extra element to the game. And then if you look at draft Twitter's biggest mistakes, like the media's biggest mistakes, and guys that we thought were going to fail, it's been when we bet against physical talent and physical profiles. I think that should be a lesson that the NFL has learned. But I've done interviews with people recently who have been in those spots formerly, like head coaches and GMs, and I've thrown that theory out that maybe we need to like flip our idea of what a pro ready quarterback is, and they're not buying it. So maybe that's how it is in the league. Maybe they're just not ready to recognize what's going on, and maybe that's why a Mac Jones is still going in the first round in 2021.
I also don't think that any of us on the outside, Stephen, can fully understand what an organizational, like what pressure is doing in these moments, right? Because in a moment when you have the opportunity to draft Tua or Justin Herbert, instead of drafting the tools, instead of drafting the ceiling, what we're doing is we're drafting who has the highest floor. And I think that's really where teams start to get into the danger zone. And I think that's probably the main reason you take Tua in that draft 2 years. So I also think there's probably a lot of pressure within that organization that you spent a whole year basically talking about tanking for Tua, and to not, draft him felt like, sacrilegious almost.
Right.
And I'm wondering now your thoughts of like an organization like the Dolphins, who have, it feels like, completely hitched their wagons to Tua. And if Tua can't elevate the rest of that roster, like they're going to have to rebuild again. And it sort of looks like it's not working in Miami. And don't worry, there's no Dolphins fans in here to like, stalk you after this podcast and tell you how dumb you are. They do that to me anyway. So, but I do wonder, like, is that where we have gotten to as a league, as the pressure to get to not get fired the following season or to stay off a hot seat means maybe sacrificing the idea of tools and sacrificing the idea of drafting a guy with a bigger ceiling just in order to draft a guy with the higher floor?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a safe thing to do, is to draft a guy with the lower floor, because the media is not going to kill you. Like if you look at Chris Greer, I know he's getting flack in Miami for what the picks he's made, but no one in the national media is really like, what's up with Chris Greer? Why did he draft Tua over? Because we all thought that was the order: Burrow, Tua, Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that helps. But talking about the Dolphins and whether Tua is the guy, I think let's just ignore what has happened this season and pretend like the Dolphins are winning games like they won last year, and maybe they're on track to make the playoffs. And you still have the same question, right? Because Tua is still the same guy. The team around him is just performing well. I would just look at it like we don't need to rebuild necessarily, but we need to understand that even if we have team success, Tua is a one contract quarterback. He's a rookie contract quarterback. That's the only way you can win with him as your starter. If you have to pay him $25 million plus, you're not going to win. And I do think the Dolphins organization and front office is smart enough to recognize that. So I think they're going to make the right choice. I don't think they're going to get hung up on making Tua work and forcing it.
Is the right choice trading for Deshaun Watson?
No, I would not trade for Deshaun Watson. I don't know how any team would be comfortable trading for Deshaun Watson. I wouldn't even consider it if I was one of these teams.
If you're trying to save your job and you're desperate because you swung and missed on a franchise quarterback in the first round, do you think it might be desperate enough to pull it?
No, because I think the downside is you traded 3 first-round picks and Deshaun Watson never plays for you. And given what he's accused of doing, that just compounds the issue. You trade it for someone who's been accused of sexual assault and he never played, and you gave up your next half a decade of picks. I just don't think it's worth it.
Well, I'll tell you what was worth it, having you on the show.
Indeed.
Steve,
Thank you.
thank you so much for being a part of this. I appreciate you taking 20 minutes out of your Friday evening to spend the time with Nate and I. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on social media and what you're up to at the Ringer?
Yeah, you can find me at the Steven Ruiz. That's Steven with a V. And I'm writing twice a week at the Ringer. I write a Monday column, and I write a column that usually comes out Thursday. And I do the Friday Ringer show, the podcast. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. We appreciate
Thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Always a good time.
I'm a big Steven Ruiz fan, and I know some Bills fans are still salty at him because he didn't like Josh Allen, but I'll say this about Steven is like, I think some of my favorite minds, particularly the Ringer team, who they've just like kind of created a stable of really young, really impressive people in the industry. Benjamin Solak and he is being the kind of like the two Noah Princiotti. Like there's a lot of really good talent within that organization at the Ringer, and with Steven, just like Benjamin, I think has done a good job of saying like, hey, I allow my work and my knowledge of the game to drive my sort of instincts and to drive my takes. And when they are wrong, I am admitting that they are wrong. And I think those are the kind of people in this industry that I respect, because their hot takes tend to get, defended until you can't defend them anymore. Right. And I think when you're actually coming from a place that were like Steven and some of these other folks that, did not like Josh coming out, you and me did not like Josh coming out. And I think, for our own sanity, we had to sort of turn the page on our thoughts on Josh Allen sooner than some of the national media did. But a guy like Steven was one of the first ones that said, yeah, like I was wrong, man. And again, I guess I'll always kind of save a space in my, it's going to sound weird, but like in my heart for people that I don't think just their conviction to a take isn't dependent on, being right. It's about actually being right. And wanting your ability to say that you're wrong about something take precedent over your inability to see it, or worse, knowing that you're wrong and sticking to your take, which I think is the disingenuous sort of sphere of talking heads that we're in right now, right? Is just, I think a lot of us here in Buffalo, which, we know Buffalo podcast, Bruce, there are so many good ones. I think there are so many genuinely good people that do this for a living, that when you see the disingenuous ones, you're just like, on to the next. I don't need it. There's just not a place for it.
It's about truth over ego. It's really that simple. Truth over ego. And I think that in the long run, that's probably gonna win out. So it's always good to see people like that. And I think the longer that the evidence is out there and you're still clinging onto it, you're moving the goalposts and you're changing your argument, or you're denying you ever said that, or you're saying you were joking, or you're doing all the things to try to avoid just taking the humble pie, the worse it gets when it comes to stuff like that. So I agree with you. I can appreciate that. A reminder to you all that our guest on this hotline for the Food for Thought was brought to you by Thrive Fantasy. Come prop up on Thrive Fantasy this football season. Thrive Fantasy is a daily fantasy sports and esports app for player props. With Thrive, you can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus on only the top tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. Choose 10 out of the 20 available player props to build your lineup. Each prop is assigned a fantasy value for both the over and the under based on how likely it is to hit. Hit the most props and rack up the most points to win a share of the prize pool. Thrive has awarded over $4 million so far. Thrive's featured $100,000 guaranteed contest is $20 to enter, and first place takes home $20,000. Use promo code BUFFBILLS, that's BUFFBILLS, when you sign up today, and you will receive a 100% instant first deposit match up to $100. Download Thrive Fantasy on the App Store or Play Store, or by visiting their website, www.thrivefantasy.com. Again, that's www.thrivefantasy.com. Sign up and prop up today. Mr. Geary.
We got stuff to cover.
We do.
Bruce.
We've only
got 15 minutes, so we better get going on a couple of things that I'm actually maybe most excited to talk about, which is our weekly scheme talk.
Weekly scheme talk. What are you looking for? What is your eye on? Aside from, hey, let's just get a W, right? Aside from that, What are you interested? What scratches the football itch for you this week with the Buffalo Bills against, I don't know if you've heard, but the Bills are playing the Chiefs this week. I don't know if that's come up in any of your conversations.
A few times.
But I just thought I mentioned it in passing here because, we get distracted by, chili and F words and the pumpkin. And because of it, we forget schematically what's going on. So what are you looking for?
If I were to ask you, Bruce, who is the 10th best fantasy running back since week 2, what would your answer be?
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. No, Zach Moss.
It is Zach Moss.
Yeah, I got it.
And I believe it's weird. This teeter-tottering back and forth between Singletary and Moss. This is a good matchup for Moss this week. I think they're going to need to run the ball when they get up in this football game. I don't believe you can really run the ball to get up in this football game. So, with that said, Bruce, I think that there has to be the style of running back that we know that Zach Moss is, I think is the kind that you need to be able to grind out the clock when you get up a score, when you get up 2 scores, which, could happen in this game based on the defense on the other side of the ball. I don't believe Kansas City's defense is very good right now. I believe that they could end up holding them back, Bruce. I believe that the opportunity for the Bills is an injury this year. The opportunity for the Bills to take the place of Kansas City has fallen directly on the hands of this defense for Kansas City, led by Steve Spagnuolo. It is not good. They have not played well together. Tyrann Mathieu, I still think, has not quite recovered from COVID, just like we've saw Deion Dawkins struggle through a couple of weeks. I think Tyrann Mathieu's having a similar situation. I think they miss Rashad Breeland a lot. Rashad Breeland, I'm sorry. And I genuinely... I have not agreed with and don't believe that the move to the edge for Chris Jones has been a fruitful one at all. And we know he's battling a wrist injury and he's questionable to play on Sunday. But even if he does play and he's playing at 75, 80%, he has not been the player. And it's been getting a lot of flack in the media there in Kansas City over the last week or two because he just has not been performing at the level that I think a lot of people expect him to. He's a top tier interior defensive lineman. The problem is they've bumped him outside. He's playing out of position and it hasn't looked good for Kansas City through the first 4 weeks of the season. So scheme wise, Bruce, I think it's incredibly important for the Bills to just do what they do. We heard Emmanuel Sanders talk about it this week. And God, if Emmanuel Sanders hasn't turned into maybe just the best listen out of any Bills player, the insight, the knowledge, and as experience in the league and understanding what's important and being around and winning a Super Bowl, I think is very important. That I think they needed a player like Emmanuel on the offense in particular. I think a guy like Stephon Diggs at 27 years old, right? Like he's not young, he's not old, but I think everyone has sort of needed the presence of Emmanuel Sanders. I think we're going to know the return on investment for Emmanuel Sanders and Gabriel Davis's game probably won't be seen until next year. But I guarantee that there is a lot of strides being made internally behind the scenes that we're not seeing with Gabriel Davis because Emmanuel Sanders is in town. So for me, I'm gonna sort of channel what Emmanuel said, which is not trying to do too much, not trying to change who you are, change what got you here. Got you to 3-1. It's gotten you to 3 consecutive really strong games, both from your offense and defense, and from your quarterback. And I think ultimately what this comes down to, Bruce, is the quarterbacks, right? Can Josh Allen play at the level that Patrick Mahomes is playing at? And his first 2 matchups, that has not been there. So for me, it's maybe a dumbed down version of what I believe the scheme or what I'm looking for scheme-wise, but I'm looking for the Bills to remain in what they do. When they try to do too much, when they try to extend themselves, when they try to make an extra play, when they're trying to get points, that just plays right into the hands of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think for me, what I'm looking most forward to is can you remain yourself and lean into it a little bit?
For me, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the payoff for some of the moves that the Buffalo Bills made this offseason, specifically on the defensive line. You have a rare opportunity here. You have a completely reshuffled Kansas City offensive line. You added to your defensive line. You added a player like Gregory Rousseau. You added Boogie Basham. You brought in F.A. Obata. You did these things. You got Star Lotulelei back, who, mind you, has suddenly become a good pass rusher after a year off at 31 years old, because that's a common thing. People do that all the time. Makes complete sense. The NFL's not weird. I'm fine. Anyway, I think that your ability to get pressure with 4 will change this game. And we all know that Everybody saw the Super Bowl. Everybody saw what getting pressure with 4. But the difference was Patrick Mahomes had a broken foot and they had 3 new offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
Now they restocked the cupboard and Patrick Mahomes' foot has been holding up perfectly fine. Can you still get pressure with 4? Because if you have to bring blitz, that's bad. If you can't get home with 4, you don't have the speed on the back end for Tyreek Hill. You have to get home with 4. If they get home with 4, I'm going to go ahead and say this now. If the Bills are able to generate consistent pressure with 4 down linemen, I think they win. I think that's the key to the game.
I was listening to the afternoon show today, Bruce, and I'm interested in your take on this. And I thought Bulldog brought it up on Mike Trope and the Bulldog afternoon show on WGR. And he said, how quickly, if you're Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott, do you pivot? And how quickly, because you're going to try to get there with 4. And how quickly do you change your approach if it doesn't work? Is it the first drive? Is it they score 14 points and maybe you pivot? And instead of saying we're going to pivot to trying to bring pressure or simulated blitzes or simulated pressure, instead of those things, what if the game plan turns into let's slow it down and let's get our hands in passing lanes? Let's bring Gregory Rousseau. Let's bump him down to a 3 technique on passing downs. Let's get his hands into those passing lanes and force. Listen, when Patrick Mahomes goes off platform, he is still just as good of a quarterback throwing sidearm, underarm, like a Jeter throw where he's in midair trying to throw. But if you are the Bills, you have to like your chances if you can try to make Patrick Mahomes change the platform and his release as much as possible. If you can interfere with that, you're gonna get some inaccurate throws. He is human. I know that he hasn't really been for the past 3 or 4 years, but I think one of the ways you win in this football game is if you can interfere with his passing lanes and not give him easy layups. So I guess my question to spit to you, Bruce, is how quickly do you believe the Bills, how short is that leash for the game plan that they're going to roll out defensively? And do you believe it looks a lot like the one we saw in the regular season in week 5 last year?
I think you absolutely have to give it time to get home, because what you can do over the first couple of drives is you can start of kind of pick the lock. So I don't know if you have any experience picking locks or anything like that, but obviously you have to press in on tumblers in different orders at different compressions to find the thing that clicks. And so lock picking is a lot like understanding defensive thing. Okay, let's try this. We're kind of probing the weak spots to see what works. And so I don't want to panic, and I don't want to give it 1 or 2 drives, then go, okay, this isn't working. We're down 14-0 or 14-7 or 14-3 or 14-10. I don't want to do that. Let's do something else, because you got to kind of probe to figure out what you're going to do. But I think the key, and one of the reasons why I was all in on let's get more coverage players, is I want Patrick Mahomes to hold the ball longer. And historically, he's been very, very, very good when he holds the ball longer. This year, not as much. If you look at his splits holding the ball less than 2.5 seconds versus more than 2.5 seconds, you kind of want him to hold the ball a little bit more. And I think that speaks to not having Sammy Watkins. That speaks to the fact that Mecole Hardman is a manufactured touches guy, and he's a deep speed burner, but he's not going to shake loose in the short area. That's not what he does. I think they miss Sammy Watkins. And I know that's not a insane take, but Sammy Watkins being better than Mecole Hardman is not a crazy take by any means. And when you have Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, and essentially
it's why I think the infusion of Josh Gordon could be really interesting.
I'm going to be really interested to see what that looks like, because the fact of the matter is we just don't know. The last time we saw Josh Gordon he was a Seahawk, and he was fine. And we saw him as a Patriot, and he was fine. So this idea that Josh Gordon's going to come in and be a star is
that's not happening.
I just don't think it's happening at this point. But could he be better than Byron Pringle? Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. Apparently once you pop, you can in fact stop, because you don't have to put Byron Pringle in anymore. You can put Josh Gordon in instead. So I appreciate the fact that I got a chance to do that and have that conversation here. So we have some comments to get to. We have a mailbag question to get to. So while I am getting the mailbag question ready, if you are here in the comments with us, go ahead and drop your questions in there. We will try and get to as many as we can. If you give us a YouTube super chat, we promise we will get to it. But if you have questions, concerns, takes, cries of outrage, go ahead and throw them in the comments as I grab this question. So Evan sends me every week, emails me a ridiculous almighty take. And he's a little superstitious because the Bills are
Is he a little
3-0.
superstitious or is he a little stitious?
He's a little stitious. And the Bills are 3-0 in games where he sends me a ridiculous prediction. So he keeps doing it. And he says, Bruce, I'm too far excited after the second shutout in 3 games, but I'm going to plant my flag in the ground here. The Buffalo Bills are going to blow the doors off of Arrowhead Stadium. It won't be close. The NFL is going to find out Daddy is home, and he lives in Orchard Park. 4 turnovers. Josh has 3 touchdowns. 27-3 Bills over Chiefs. McDermott ends with eyes forward to the home game hosted by the Nashville Bills backers the next week. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have never been held to less than 10 points ever, except for the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that was 9.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, so you're going to have to score. So I love Evan. I have to read his take because it's tradition, but that's something. So we had somebody in the comments who wanted to ask you specifically a trade request. And I know how much you love trade requests.
I do.
Nate. And I'm trying to find it in here, but it was specifically about, there it is. Nate, do you think the Bills should trade Cole Beasley, a second, and Gabriel Davis for Michael Thomas to give us the size and skill we need? I'm going to go ahead and let you take this one.
You want me to take it?
I want you to take it, yeah.
All right, I'm going to take this trade. I love it for my fantasy dynasty team. I in all reality, I listen. I like to think I've got a pretty good feel on the NFL. I don't believe Michael Thomas is going to be in New Orleans long term. I think there's been some broken ground there. The foundation has been fractured a little bit in the relationship with he and Sean Payton. So, do I believe Michael Thomas is available for the right trade? Yeah, absolutely. That's not a trade that's going to get that trade done. Cole Beasley sort of feels like, listen, I'm a big Cole Beasley fan, but it sort of feels like a spare part, a guy on an expiring contract. Gabriel Davis, a lot of great upside in a second round pick for, a top 5 receiver in the NFL. And yeah, I'd love nothing more than pairing Stephon Diggs and Michael Thomas together in this Bills offense. But you simply you're in a year where you're likely going to have to start tweaking or thinking about tweaking the Stephon Diggs contract. And this is in a roster with a quarterback they're paying $258 million that you can afford to pay 2 top 5 salaries at the wide receiver position. It can't count for 11% of your salary. So I think for me, it's fun to think about. And what I love Michael Thomas, absolutely, but yeah, not happening.
I absolutely love ridiculous trade discussions. I think
you and me do it all the time. Like, instead of preparing for our show every Friday night, I just get on and all we do is talk about fantasy trades. So
pretty much, yeah,
as is tradition.
Speaking of which, I tried to make a Terry McLaurin trade, but then all of a sudden he blew up, and now Nate doesn't want to talk anymore. It's crazy how that happens.
It is crazy. Bruce, could I actually? I didn't mention something really quick because I didn't do this last week, and I needed to do this. So I'm dropping a quick little link for the folks in our chat through here, and I dropped it through the Buffalo Rumbling spot. So if anybody doesn't know, I am an ambassador this year for the Real Men Wear Pink campaign. And what I'm doing is raising money for the American Cancer Society for breast cancer research. And I would love it if anyone here would like to donate to my page. I tried to post it, but it says it posted as an error. But I just posted it up in the chat here. Any amount it would do. I appreciate anyone that gives to my cause, but I am in a dead heat with Del Reed, Sal Capaccio, and Ryan Talbot as well. And out of the media folk that are in this, I intend to win. I'm at $2,700 raised so far just through grassroots efforts. And anybody that's willing to, give or pledge a little money to my cause, I would greatly appreciate it. And as this coming from a guy that I know you have lots of opportunities to be charitable and to give money to great organizations around the country, around the world. So I'm honored for just the thought of and just your consideration. If you want to give, I would be absolutely honored for that. So I just wanted to make sure I drop that tidbit of knowledge, since it is a campaign I'm very passionate about. as a cancer survivor myself. So yeah, go on, and of course it's on my Twitter page as well. If you end up leaving this chat or you're listening to this tomorrow on a recorded podcast, you just go to my Twitter at Nate Geary Sports. It's the pinned tweet. There's a link right to my page. And again, once again, I appreciate anyone that's sort of willing to give.
Okay, would you trade a bowl of chili for the best grilled cheese sandwich ever? These are the questions I want.
That is the hardest question anyone's ever asked.
This is what I want in the comment section. I want would you rather fight a kangaroo-sized fish or 10 fish-sized kangaroos? Like, that's what I want. Like, I want those in the comment section because that's the fun stuff. And this is what I'm talking about. Would you trade a bowl of chili for the best grilled cheese sandwich ever?
That is such a good question.
First off, depends on the chili, obviously, I think, because we've all had bad chili. I think we can all agree we have bad chili.
Okay, before what is the thing that constitutes bad chili? Because I think the greatest mistake people make is by over beaning the chili. There is a role for kidney beans in chili, but for the love of God, people, I don't want beans with a side of chili.
I'll level with you. I think to me, it's an overemphasis on chili powder as the predominant flavor, to be honest. I think the inability to be able to balance a flavor profile and just have it just taste like liquefied chili powder. I've had that before. Just
me too.
Bean liquefied chili soup. Like, that's it. That's all you got. So for me, Earth Rocker, I'm going to operate on the assumption this is my wife's chili. Okay. Because this is the chili I have the most. And the answer is no. I would not trade a bowl of my wife's chili for the best grilled cheese sandwich ever. Although I like grilled cheese sandwiches. I'm a big fan. However, from a chili standpoint, my wife's chili is good enough that we have literal bags of it hanging frozen in the deep freezer that we just pull out year round when we want a meal. We just go grab a bag of chili because we make a huge pot of it and we siphon it off.
Freeze it up. Yeah.
And we freeze it up. And so for me, I would not. Would you, Nate?
So anytime I get asked a question like this, what I have to then ask myself is, which of these two can stand alone? Chili can stand alone. Grilled cheese is usually best with chili or like tomato soup, right? Like those are almost like the necessities. Yeah,
dipping.
Right. And I'm also a big believer that the best grilled cheese sandwich does not use real cheese. Like, I have no interest in real cheeses in my grilled cheese. I want Kraft. I want like Velveeta slices. I'm good with, the white or American, but it's got to be American, oily, fake processed cheese. And can I tell you that it needs to be rye bread, fresh rye bread with an American cheese and lots of butter in a pan. I saw Richard in our chat here say that he makes his grilled cheese in the oven, and I think that's an interesting route. I've never heard of that. I know some people use mayo, which is, you're a freaking psychopath if you're using mayo as your butter component, but apparently has a higher flash point, so it browns it better. I don't care. I'm going chili strictly off the fact that when I eat a grilled cheese sandwich, I'm either going to need 3 of them or I need something to go with it. And that's where I'm standing on that.
Non-food related question. Will the Bills get Gabe Davis involved in the game plan this week? He's been way under the radar. I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no as well.
Because it's Emmanuel Sanders' job. And this team went off the reservation a little bit week 1. They went with a lot of 10 personnel in week 1. And it didn't go great for them. And they found their rhythm with 11 personnel. Dawson Knox has been playing well. Right now, Dawson Knox with Gabriel Davis probably still fighting an injury at this point.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I think that you're better off with Dawson Knox than you are with Gabriel Davis. I'm going to say no. I think, Nate, you agree with me on this. Okay, moving on.
I do. Yeah, I do, Bruce.
Free pizza or free donuts? Free pizza.
Free pizza.
Free pizza.
Well,
absolutely.
Where are the donuts from? Are they cake donuts or are they crullers?
They're Paula's and assorted, and you can do whatever you want with it.
I like Paula's, but cake donuts are no bueno for me. I can eat one. I can eat 3 slices of pizza.
The fact of the matter is, I will eventually get sick of donuts, and I'll have a sugar crash. I will not have a sugar crash from pizza. I had a new type of pizza today. I will post it on my Instagram
Bruce,
later, and I'm a big fan.
I would like you to come back to town soon, and I think I'd like to take you to another pizza joint. You and the wife.
Ready.
You and Miss
Let's
Nolan.
do it.
Yeah,
let's do it. I'm all in.
Because listen, I took you to where did I take you?
Picasso's.
Picasso's. Yes, I took you to Picasso's, which is a very unique buffalo pie. Not a lot of pies like Picasso's.
By the way, reminder: my wife said it was the best pizza she ever had in her life.
And I'm glad that you didn't let the bullies on the internet that were telling me I was crazy for bringing you to Picasso's. And it's almost like here's the thing, Bruce. I've known you for a few years now. I know the type of pizza you're looking for. And listen, like the Imperials, the sort of well-known best pizza joints in Buffalo, they're all great. But you remind me of the kind of guy that would have really appreciated, and I know now Miss Nolan appreciates this as well, the little like Parmesan crack dust that gets put on the top of that pizza. That was the sincere thing. I was like, at the end of the day, I was like, I'm going to go with crack dust, and that's my final answer. And, holy cow, I love this question.
Yes. Tim says, dream charcuterie board. I'm a hard salami guy. I really like trail bologna and hard salami. And so the sharper the cheddar, the better for me. Give me the sharpest possible cheddar. And I am all in on super sharp cheddar, some hard salami, trail bologna. I am in. I really like summer sausage style stuff. So for me, that's my charcuterie board of choice.
I will say, as long as it doesn't have goat cheese on it, I'll pretty much eat any charcuterie board. But let me tell you a quick story here. So 2 years ago, my girlfriend and I traveled to Paris, France. Unbelievable trip. Our Airbnb was with an American author in her apartment. She had a little studio off to the side that we stayed in. Next door to this Airbnb in a back alley was a place called Charcuterie, and it was a charcuterie and wine bar. And obviously we stopped there. But we got the small size, which had 8 cheeses and 8 meats. There was a pate, which, when you're in another country, I don't ask questions. I'm just going to eat the stuff. And if I hate it and it's disgusting and it's gross, then I spit it out and I move on. Everything on there I liked, even like the pate. There was some like liverwurst, like there was some stuff. But here's the thing: prosciutto, speck, any of those real salty aged, those salty aged meats. Really good. A couple of days ago, we were at Lombardo's here in Buffalo, fantastic Italian restaurant, and had duck prosciutto. Holy cow, dude. That's a game changer. So for me, I like the salty cured meats, speck, sausage, pepperoni, the salami with the black pepper. Also big fan of that. But here's what I believe is an underrated cheese for a charcuterie board. Obviously, everybody goes with brie. I love brie. You have to have some sort of jam with it, though. If you're going to have brie, bring me some sort of apricot jam or something along those lines. But what I'll say is a hard a Parmesan cheese, a really good aged parm, is probably one of the best charcuterie board cheeses that I don't see enough places going with.
You know what? I have people in here who don't know what trail bologna is. Trail bologna is a Midwest thing. So I've lived all over the country. This has been well established that I was born just west of Philadelphia, and much like the Fresh Prince, I am essentially the Fresh Prince of Bill's Mafia. And I've lived all over the country, but I spent some time in the Midwest too. And it's a Midwest sausage, a beef sausage that is essentially beef sliced bologna. It's a thing. No, I'm not going to lie. It's a thing. And first off, thank you guys so much for commenting and for being in the comment section. I love this. I absolutely love this. Attica says in the comment section, great work again today, fellas. Appreciate your efforts. Guys, I love when the comment section is getting with us on this stuff. It gives the podcast such a great energy, and it's hard at the end of a long week. I'm tired, right? I'm in my pajamas right now. I finished my root beer. I'm going to go to bed and crash.
Same.
Tonight.
I'm going to eat soup.
Yeah, you're going to eat soup. My wife is in the kitchen right now baking because we're delivering a cake to somebody early tomorrow morning. We're driving down about 2 hours away to deliver a cake to somebody. And so she's up there doing this. It's going to be a late night baking and cleaning up. We're going to get up early. I'm exhausted. You guys being in the comment section generates the energy. Yeah. And so I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Can I leave with one question to you?
Absolutely.
Fresh sourdough or Texas toast?
In what form? Like, what am I using it on?
Okay, and not only this, but Texas toast. See, this is what makes this question a little bit harder, because Texas toast, you obviously want toasted, because I think it just makes it delicious. And obviously with fresh sourdough, you're leaving you're not toasting that. You want that fresh. So if I put you in a corner and you were eating a fresh chicken noodle soup, or something that you might want to potentially dip it in, because sourdough. All right. How about with your scrambled eggs?
Sourdough for dipping. With scrambled eggs, I'll take Texas toast because the texture differential between the eggs being soft and the Texas toast being crunchy.
Okay.
And I want the sourdough because not being toast, if you dip it in like a chicken noodle soup, the porousness of the sourdough will suck all that up.
I've got some sourdough that I'm about to dip into the Thai vegetable soup that my girlfriend is in the process of making, or almost have made. So,
well, thank you so much for joining us. Real quick, yes. Tim, just so you know, it's a Philly cheesesteak. That's my favorite Philadelphia food. Yeah. It's a Philly cheesesteak. It's amazing. But thank you so much for joining us, guys. I really appreciate it. Shoot me an email. Let me know what you thought. Do me a favor, comment on the YouTube video, like, subscribe, do all the engagement stuff. We appreciate it. We love y'all. Thank you for showing up. We hope you had a good time this evening, and we hope you didn't leave hungry.